Are we actually in trouble for 2021?
I
So
mean,
I have my own theories and opinions to this,
Yeah.
but it just.
I mean,
what do you think?
in the research we've done, the YouTube link that I sent you, and that, everybody wants to be Nostradamus. Everybody after a big extended period of growth, it's so easy to pontificate on now it's time for the crash. But what does a crash even look like, and what does it mean? Is a recession a crash after one of the best economical times of our lifetime?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to call that a crash, go ahead.
Yeah.
But every peak has a valley, and every valley has a peak at some point.
Yeah.
So, like, are we gonna contract after 10+ years of growth in the real estate world? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think that the crash that everyone's talking about, there are factors, and I'll talk about what I believe is going to happen.
Yeah.
And like from what I've researched and what I've been picking up on from reading the news. But really, I think the real estate industry could have kept growing, but just because of COVID, it kind of like, not escalated, but it kind of moved forward the crash, like to happening earlier than it might have.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm seeing, and like there's a few factors right now that are similar to 2008, and there are some things that are totally different because we're facing something that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Right. So right now the whole thing is like the eviction crisis is where it's starting because everyone's really scared that they're going to get evicted. Right. So normally we see about 4 million filings every year for evictions, but only about like 10 to 30%. I know that's a huge like percentage, but like only 10 to 30% actually like go through the whole process of being evicted. Right.
Right.
Now they're predicting about 10 to 15 million being filed. So if you take that like 10 to 30%, you're looking at about roughly 4 to 5 million people being evicted.
That's interesting. That is a very interesting stat.
I don't know where that
10
10 to 15 million came from.
Yeah,
but that's what they're predicting.
Yeah, and everybody can predict.
It might be based on like the unemployment rate that's going on right now because unemployment shot up because a bunch of businesses are closing.
That's true. They probably have history matrix around unemployment and evictions.
Yeah.
They probably do have something historically that shows when this
100%.
happens, that happens.
Yeah, I don't know when if I had to take a guess on when they started tracking it, probably 50s, 1950s, something like that.
Yeah.
But so there's the eviction crisis, right? So that's what everyone's scared about. And the plus side to this is it's going to get delayed a lot because the courts are super backed up because there's so many more being filed. So the bonus to that is it gives the Senate a long time to come together and figure things out, figure out a solution. So that way, that long-term thing that the NAR was talking about with President Trump, they have a long time to figure that out. Yeah. So we'll probably start, if they're filing now, we'll probably see it around like January, April when it starts going into effect, like when they start moving forward. So the problem with this is if let's say the landlords lose their tenants, they're going to have a hard time filling that space back up because unemployment is still pretty high.
So what that means is that rent rates are going down. So if someone then can't afford the lease that they've got and they get evicted, someone else is going to come in there and they're probably going to need to take less to actually get that place full.
Yeah,
right?
but like at the same time, it kind of hurts them because if the tenant hadn't been paying because of COVID, they have a lot more money. They just ate a huge cost, and it's like, where is that cost coming from?
Yeah.
So the prices could either go down to fill it, or they could go up because they're trying to like remake that money that they lost.
Yeah.
So we're not really sure what landlords are going to do.
I think it's supply and demand, right? So if everybody's getting evicted and they don't have any jobs, they can't afford the house.
Exactly.
But if I feel like the economy, the unemployment rate, I'm pretty sure is on its way down again.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Yeah.
So maybe in that buffer of it going from, what is it, maybe 8 million right now, if it goes, or 8%. Yeah, that's I think that's the last number I heard was 8%. But so if it could get trimmed down to 5% in the next 12 months, then those predictions of evictions should come down. Like, it's not going to be as a nightmare as it could have been.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm always to the optimistic. I'm always to the positive. I do come from the perspective of I only hold 5 units. You know,
Right.
like if I held 500 units,
Could be scary.
I might have to think differently.
Right.
So like my perspective on this as a small investor in a little bit of a unit, like a unit count, I don't have the perspective of being a giant, you know, yet.
Right. Yeah. Right. So let's see. It depends on what happens with the landlords, right, and what the Senate does to like help alleviate this. But let's say that they aren't able to fill those positions, or they just don't want to go through this terrible process again, because like, what if another version of COVID comes up?
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to go through that again
Right.
if the Senate hasn't figured out what to do. So if they lose their tenants, they might sell their houses that they were renting out, or their apartment complex, duplexes, whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you're going to see this huge influx of houses on the market, which right now is very low. So the supply is going to go up and the demand will be filled, and then the demand will go down, and then we're going to have these houses just sitting on the market that all these landlords sold because they either don't want to go through this again, they lost too much money, they had to, you know, file bankruptcy or something like that.
Yeah.
So there could be a bunch of houses on the market now.
Yeah.
So we're going to see a flooded market, and whenever the flooded market happens, the prices of homes are going to go down. Now, the good news is a lot of homeowners right now are going to be safe because they've earned so much equity in their home from 2020 that any kind of correction, they'll probably be okay.
Yeah. I was going to run the stat that people from the time that they bought their house, more people have more than 50% of the equity in their home than what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when I advise a client to say, you know, if you're going to be here for 10 plus years, you can pretty much survive the market ebbs and flows. If you're going to sell within 3 years, it's going to be very risky to sell in 3 years because you never know which, you got to time the market right if you're selling it that soon.
Yeah.
You know, and people have had the luxury for the last 24 months to buy a house, live in it for a year, and exponentially be able to sell it for more money. You know, last year I sold a house for $315,000. Mm-hmm. This year they decided to move to DC. I sold it for $355,000.
That's
so
good.
In a year, 12 months.
Yeah.
They used the house for 12 months, and they got. I mean, that's a huge percentage return in 12 months.
Was it in like a really good area?
It was in Fairlawn. I mean, it was in a nicer neighborhood. I mean, it was a nice house. I mean, $300,000 house around here. You know, it's nice.
Yeah.
So that was a remarkable situation in this time, and that's just not going to be possible in a declining market. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting time because especially here locally, like typically we survive the national averages and any ups and downs. Like we just pretty steady pace on like we beat the national averages no matter which way it's going. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And, you know, depending on how it goes with the flooded markets, we might see even more houses go out. Because if someone owns a second property, like let's say they live up north and then they go down south for the summer,
right?
They might see the dropping prices and be like, oh, I don't like want to keep that house
the
anymore.
The vacation homes might be going.
Yeah, they might leave because they see the market being flooded. And usually whenever the real estate market gets flooded and starts becoming stagnant is when you start to see the economy tank. So they might want to like liquidate that asset so that way they have cash.
I would be very interested to know what the people are saying in the vacation communities. You know, like Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Like what kind of market is Myrtle Beach, South Carolina right now? Because that was a hot spot. That was a very big hot spot. You know, and you know, I seen an article about Miami. People are just dumping property in Miami. Like it's a buyer's market in these big areas that have big numbers of coronavirus.
Yeah.
You know, so very interesting time.
I wonder how that would. I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I go back down to like the beach because I have family that lives there.
Right.
So I might just like poke around while I'm down there, like for Christmas or something.
Right.
See what's going on down there. But so here's the big kicker. In 2021. So we've already talked about all these houses that could flood the market based on how the eviction crisis is going to happen.
Yeah.
We haven't considered what inflation is going to look like next year because we've had the government just pumping money into the economy to help stimulate it.
Right.
So now we have all this extra cash or digital currency, whatever you want to call it, flowing around in our economy. So some people have gotten disposable income depending on their living situation. So what does that mean? We won't see that effect until sometime like next year, maybe 2022.
Yeah.
So if inflation occurs, they're going to raise interest rates. If interest rates go up, all those homes that are sitting on the market, people aren't going to want to buy them because we've gotten so used to this below 3% interest rate. So if it hits high 3s, low 4s, are they going to buy those houses? This is all like perfect storm kind of scenarios. There's a lot of factors that are going into this.
Yeah. And we need to table that. That's a topic we need to talk to Dave Sheeler about, you know, because typically when the rates come up, the prices come down, depending on what the demand is. Like typically there's an ebb and flow between the rates and the values. You know, when the rates go low, values go up, obviously, in the reverse, right? Mm-hmm. So it just depends on what the demand actually is, if people are going to continue to buy. But typically, once these rates spike a little bit, some time goes by, like a little bit of time goes by, and then things just start picking back up as normal. Mm. You know, that's typically what happens. And around here anyway, you know, within the 14 years I've been doing this, that, you know, I've seen rates. I bought a house at like 6%. You know, and then I've got a mortgage now, or I just locked in a client for 2.5%.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, it wouldn't have stopped me knowing that I could have gotten a lower rate if I was in a buyer situation wanting a home. If I could get it, I'd probably go ahead and pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder what the Senate's going to do about this whole eviction crisis, because all of these problems that we could see in 2021 stem from them doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Because right now, I think, aren't they on recess?
No, they're actually in session.
Oh, they're in session right now? Okay. Wait.
Or they're about to be back in session.
So
I know the Supreme Court thing put them back into work.
Yeah. So I wonder what's happening with that. Do you know what's happening with that because of the Supreme Court justice dying like a few days ago?
Well, I mean, there's going to
Are they going back and I thought they were like kind of like boycotting because they didn't want Trump to put in a Supreme Court while the election was right around the corner.
So there, you know, we can go deep into that topic. I mean, that can be that's a point of contention with a lot of people. But from what I understand, hey, at first I took the position of, well, they didn't allow Obama's pick to get through in his last year.
Right.
And there was Republicans saying, hey, if this happens to Trump or Hillary in their last year, then hold us accountable to doing the same thing, like having this same conversation.
Yeah, in 2016 I was on that
But here's the thing, is it's the president's duty to put a nomination up. It's actually the Senate's job to confirm. Okay? So if you look at articles on this and you research history, the opposing party has never confirmed the opposition party's president's confirmation in the last year. Mm. It's never happened. Okay. So, but this hasn't even happened for the last 80 years. Like, for this to happen twice now in a row is like beyond history, right?
Unheard of.
So if you look at history of this happening, when the Senate and the president are in line, when they're the same party, the president has a constitutional obligation to put them up.
Yeah.
And the Senate confirms or denies them. So, like, they're just running the rules of the game in this situation. So, like, you know, where I took the stance of, well, you know, Obama put somebody up, but the Senate didn't confirm. Like, that was exactly the checks of power, the balances of power that we have set up. That's exactly what should have happened. Like, in the history of it all, the precedent of it all says that's what happens.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So also, they're working on a new budget. That's what their next. So I don't know where their priorities are right now.
I think they're still debating a stimulus, a second round or another round of stimulus. Right?
I know. Yeah. So they're debating stimulus, and then they have this budget coming up that they have to sort out. And if the budget doesn't get sorted out, then government comes to a halt. If the government comes to a halt right now, we're in a lot of trouble.
Definitely.
We're in a heap of trouble. And this eviction crisis could happen if the government shuts down. So they need to put their differences aside and like get to work down to the numbers to get this going, because if they don't, we're in a lot of trouble for 2021.
Yeah. They're gonna play the power game, like the power struggle that's going on now is not benefiting the people that actually need the things that they're fighting over. So they really do need to drop the power. The Game of Thrones game that they're playing needs to stop. They need to come together, work together, and like move us forward so we can get to the goals that we need achieved. So yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
So just to like wrap it back up, because like we talked about this for a while. Eviction crisis could happen depending on what the Senate says.
Yeah.
If that happens, you could see a flooded market with houses.
Yeah.
Could.
Yeah.
We don't know what. It's all, it's all dependent on the landlords.
Yeah.
And then that could increase home prices because there's going to be a huge supply. Inflation could occur at the end of next year. If inflation occurs, we're going to see a little hiccup anyways, because I think that's probably inevitable. That probably will happen.
Right.
But yeah, so that I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to kind of sit back and watch it and then play my cards the way that I feel like I'm going to be best protected.